Hello, everyone. Welcome to Life Edge. In fact, we know all about being on Life's Edge because we just got off the edge. You'll find out in a moment. And we are back. That was funny because right in the middle of the intro, yes, do I look okay on the screen? We're just having one of those days. Okay, for all those who are wondering, what we're doing today is we have had major Skype issues. Our guest, Patty Shank, Dr. Patty Shank, who was supposed to be on today, we could never get her to connect with her audio, and her Skype wasn't working, which is odd because we've talked many, many times on Skype, but today it was not cooperating. And our very own Susan Nash, Dr. Susan Nash. I had all my doctor jokes lined up today and nothing's working. I was going to say, Doctor. We have two doctors on hand. But that didn't work. But Susan Nash is with us. She's in the monitor right next to me over here, just a scant, probably 1,500 miles away. And darn, we had all sorts of Skype issues and video issues. Neither of Susan's machines worked, so that's one of the things that happened, and so we're improvising. She's on her Nexus 5.
5, yes.
5, which is a nice kind of phablet, right?
It is nice. I like it. It's an Android 5. I mean, it's good. I've really enjoyed it. I had a Windows phone before this, and I had an iPhone, but the Nexus is cool.
It is. They're nice. I have the Nexus. What do I have? The Asus tablet, the Nexus tablet.
Oh, nice.
And they're really good. It's not bad at all. It's very well built. The size is 7 inch. It's pretty good, easy. It's not heavy. Very sleek looking. So anyway, well, we are here, and our show isn't what we originally planned on. But, we wanted to talk a little bit about what we really mean. We talked a little bit last week about Life Edge and why we call the show Life Edge. And we just want to kind of clarify a little bit more what it means to be Life Edge, or why we called it Life Edge. There's a lot of things in life that can give you an edge, or that can make you feel better or happier, more productive, more passionate. And it can come from a million things. Yet last week we talked a lot about training and e-learning, because that's something both Susan and I work in, among other things. But really, it could come from poetry, it could come from dance, song, music, it could come from meditation, it could come from a million different things. And so that's really what Life Edge is. Anything that in life gives you an edge, makes you stand out a bit more, makes you just, you don't even have to be successful, just happy. Any of that will make you have a better life. Susan, anything you want to add to that?
Well, I just wanted to say I'm really glad you mentioned poetry, and I'm also glad that you mentioned writing, because I kind of think that autobiographical and life writing, that's definitely a way to give yourself an edge in terms of like grounding yourself and also accepting yourself. I came to realize that sort of the things that I was most ashamed of about myself were actually the secrets to my success, or what successful things happened. And so anyway, I realized that to come to terms with that, it really helped to journal and also just write and process memories and things about my things that, flash memories, everything. Experiences with storms, tornadoes, etc.
Yeah, and you've had your share. As we're speaking, your house got slightly decimated again from the tornadoes in Oklahoma. And if you're wondering why we've had kind of makeshift studios with Susan, it's because originally she was going to work out of the home, but the roof got kind of damaged.
Yes.
You said this is the third roof in 5 years.
Yes.
The joy of living in Oklahoma sometimes, and they complain about earthquakes. I don't know, but you're right. It's so we've improvised makeshift studios, if you will. But it is interesting. Now, I'm not a journaler per se. I've never been one to write anything like that. I like to write, but I don't really write about things I've done. But I know a lot of people who have, and like you said, it has helped them. And they felt that they could do things that they really were never able to do at any one point, and that's a good thing, because in essence it allows you to explore yourself, figure out the things that you like, that you don't like, and see, what am I going to do with me, with what I want to do, what, and there's a lot of ways to do that. Like you said, you could do it through analyzing yourself, watching yourself, trying to figure out who you are, what you are. I've taught a lot of people this exercise, and that's to observe themselves on a daily basis. Observe everything you do. You are the disinterested person watching you, but you're dispassionately watching. You're not getting that involved. You're observing your habits, your routines, the mechanical behaviors, the robotic things we do, the emotional responses we have. And once you understand how you respond to everything, then you can start working on fixing the things you don't like or see. And we all have things we don't like or see. So it's a very good technique that helps you become more aware of who and what you are, and how you behave, how you react, how you engage. And all of that's real important, because, there's an old saying, the only real enemy is yourself. And that's really true, because you can't really control anyone, and you shouldn't really, but you can't control anything until you control yourself. If you can't control yourself, then life will pretty much be out of control. And then people wonder, why does life hit me this way? Why do I get pushed in this direction or that direction? And it's really because you're allowing yourself to be pushed, or you're making decisions or taking paths that get you into that mode. Well, what do you think, Susan?
I totally agree with you. And there are two things that come to mind. One is the idea of cognitive psychology and starting to listen to your thoughts. And sometimes listening goes too quickly. But if you write them down, you get to see where you're making big assumptions and scaring yourself sometimes from things that would be doors that you could walk through that you're afraid to, because you're saying, oh, this will be just calamitous.
Yeah.
And so then you go, okay, I need to analyze my assumptions. And then the other thing is there was an interesting book by, I think, Daniel Goleman, but also the Dalai Lama wrote some things about destructive emotions and how we generate emotions in our mind. And so it's very easy to start to make ourselves miserable through our own thoughts when we aren't aware of it. So a couple of years ago, I developed what I call the 2-hour rule. And the 2-hour rule is, I might feel really miserable or upset about something, and I think, okay, this is probably just a brain chemical fluctuation. Don't know what it's about, so I'm just going to, my 2-hour rule is that I'm not going to think about it, and in 2 hours, it will probably pass unless I start obsessing about this generalized angst or existential anxiety that I'm feeling. And it's actually worked out really well for me.
The third hour is a bear, though, right?
Yeah. That's when
it's really bad.
Oh, well, denial works for 2 hours.
But, that's true, because if you wait long enough, something will pass. I had a teacher that used to always say, if you have to hurry, hurry slowly. And slowly could be a 2-hour hurry. Just take your time, and eventually things get better. And the absolute biggest thing that's wrong with humans is that we tend to live in fear. And fear is a wonderful controller for anybody. That's why so many governments are dictatorships around the world, or communist regimes, or whatever else, because it's easy to control people in fear.
Absolutely.
And that's everybody. From the day you get to school. I remember as a little kid, I went to Catholic school in New York, and they showed us the rulers and the instruments of torture and humiliation. And we went, that's not good. And it wasn't, because they became part of our friends. Many times we got whacked. Now, mind you, we deserved everything we got, but it was actually fear. So they kept us. Well, in my school, I think in my class, there were 2 buildings. One was the boys' building, the other one was the girls' building. And never the two shall meet. And the boys' building, 50 boys in one class. I don't believe for a second that you can't get educated with 50 people in one class and one teacher. They did very well. We were way beyond the public schools in that school by the time we hit 8th grade. But the thing is, it was very good control by fear. Now, that didn't mean we obeyed everything. That just meant we knew when to be fearful and when to get back. So there was that kind of passive aggressive kind of relationship every so often. But it was fun, and it was not at the time, but when I look back on it now, it was good discipline. They kept us really organized at a time we probably needed it. And then when all was said and done, we realized, wow, that was pretty good. We were sheep. We were very well controlled, but yet we got an education out of it. And they even forced critical thinking upon us, which I thought was interesting, because they made us think. Kind of an interesting.
Internalize it, and then you get this like internalized self-regulation. What's interesting is I did my dissertation on the use of the apocalyptic narrative used by kind of mad messiah types or messianic leaders to manipulate and control people.
Sure.
And it's like the gift that keeps on giving, because what you said is absolutely spot on about manipulating through fear. And you can just look at like Maslow's hierarchy and look at the lowest level is a subsistence, shelter, and then after that it's like need for affiliation. And get your basic needs, and the foods, shelter, whatever, and what the doomsday cult leader does is says, okay, believe in me, and I will protect you because everything's going to the dogs or worse.
Right.
End of the world is imminent, and we embrace that because if you go with me, the new world will happen, and you will be part of that new world. The old bad world will go away, and if you don't believe in me, you'll be part of that gone away world. That's like simplifying, but it's amazing how effective that strategy is.
Oh, it works. It works in almost all cases because people react well to these things. It's like, hey, great, I don't have to think, I don't have to be a part of it. I'm just going to obey. That's good, and I'm afraid anyway. But a lot of it is due to fear, and there's an old line which is true. Just because you're paranoid doesn't mean somebody's not out to get you.
It's true, though. And I'm glad you mentioned that because there's the way that gets reinforced is the fact that they can point to real problems and real threats. And I did part of my dissertation on analyzing the David Koresh and doomsday cults and Waco, and then with the Waco event that happened with the motorcycle gangs. I was just, or clubs or whatever they are. And I was just like, Waco. Unfortunately, if you're from Waco, people aren't thinking Baylor; they're thinking bad things.
Right. Yeah, it's true. But the gangs or the organizations or the fraternal clubs, like they like to call themselves. In essence, they're not the best exactly organizations, but they serve the same purpose as fear. They keep people belonging and happy and whatever else. So it's just kind of an interesting aside, and it's something that we all respond very well to. And fear is a great controller. Look how many scary movies are out there because they make us fear. And then, of course, you go home and you're looking past the door to see if there's really the Wolfman coming through or whatever else you're afraid of. And it works. There's obviously an innate part of us that's afraid. It's part of that fight or flight syndrome. It's built into us to react to fear, whether the fear comes from a government, a dictator, a crazy cult leader, or whatever else. We are pre-programmed, if you will, to react in a fearful way. Now, if you can control the fear to a certain point, then you can pretty much not be controlled. So it is hard because there's a lot of programming and everything else that goes into it. But in essence, from the day we're born to the day we probably go, there's a certain amount of fear. And it's the key here is, how much do you let it control you? How much do you let fear get an edge over you versus you an edge over fear? Now, a little bit of fear is good.
Exactly. And the edge, that's right, and that's a life edge. Being able to work through that and be aware that, okay, I'm feeling fear. It's natural. And I probably should not try to totally rid myself of fear, but use it as awareness and then know where it's coming from.
Right.
And then if I have no ethics, I can use that to manage people.
Yeah, and that's well, the problem is, whenever you're in a position of managing power, or whatever else, there's always the potential for abuse. Because most people, when they are in those positions, tend to be abusive. And we've had in the past certain people that we put into positions of management, especially of media people. And it was really interesting. They were media people themselves. And the minute they got into power, it was like, whoa, what just happened? We just created a dictator. And we had to really rein them back in because it was pretty bad. And it never really understood what caused that. But I did have some theories that when people feel they have no power and they are given power, they often don't know how to react to the power. So they assume, I now have power, so I might as well use it. And so they become unbearable. But that's an issue. And, most people are never really taught how to manage people, and they're not taught how to be considerate. I mean, think of it this way. If you go back to the beginning and you teach a child consideration, respect, discipline, a certain point of selflessness plus a certain point of selfishness, because you need both really to survive in this world. How do you get that child to understand that it's not just about them, it's not just about power, it's not just about whatever. We are part of a group many times, and we do work in teams. And if we could have a team work in a nice collaborative manner, that helps. Everybody, benefits from it. Easy? No, it's not that easy. But it'd be a nice goal to achieve. And imagine how many kids are born into situations that are horrific. And, how do you get them back on track? It's difficult. So, these are all the things that take away those edges in life. But yet you can find those edges and figure out what to do with them, through time. What was it? I forgot who said it, but, we're born, and then we spend the rest of our life undoing what we learned. And it's so true.
Oh, it is so true. It's so true. And thinking of the edge, like ways to have an edge in terms of where and how we work with a group, I personally think forming a wonderful mission statement and vision. I know probably, I've totally drunk the Kool-Aid, not to back into the doomsday stuff, but I mean, I totally believe that in a relationship and work, even if you can just completely come up with a win-win type of mission statement and vision statement that is emotionally satisfying and which is ties with your aspirations, and your aspirations not just for material things, but aspirations about who I think I am and my identity, I think is really powerful. And that is another way to get an edge.
Yeah, though I think right now we have one issue in society, where, especially in current day society, in U.S. especially, where we're doing identity politics and everything is built on race, religion, this, that. So we're all marginated. So in other words, rather than unite us, we're all being marginated. And if you can marginate people into groups, there we go again. We have fear of the other groups and fear of control of the other group. So it's all fear.
That's a really good point. And then tying back to the Waco thing, I mean, I have to say, I've never seen media coverage exactly like what's going on there. They arrested, I think,
100 something, yeah.
And then on social media and also in news, they had just mugshots, just completely matrix of mugshots. I'm thinking, okay, this is not only is it scandalizing and making a spectacle out of this, it's turning people into circus animals.
Right.
I mean, they're all wearing their little orange things, and there have to be a few innocent people in there.
Probably.
At least, maybe one.
Yeah.
No, I mean, but the idea that it ties totally into what you were saying about making them the other, and suddenly they're different,
right.
And we can feel somehow reinforced in our own sense of, I don't know, unfortunately, usually it turns out to be superiority, which is terrible for establishing a dialogue and getting to understand other people.
Well, that's true. And of course, the problem with establishing a dialogue is nobody wants to listen to each other. So listening is a tough, you've done consulting. I've been a consultant. We've both been consultants for a long time. And, one of the key attributes of a good consultant is listening.
Yes.
If you don't listen and then ask questions, you'll never know, or if you won't be paying attention. And that's one of the key issues in our world. I never liked the 24-hour news cycle because it is a manipulative environment. From, I don't care if you're right, left, in between, upside down, backwards, Martian, whatever. It's not conducive to a healthy environment because, one, news only focuses on the negative, and that's it. You may have 400 million people in our country. We have one crime, and 300 million people think it's everywhere. It's one crime, maybe. Or there's a couple of degenerates or nuts or whatever else, but that's not everyone. That's the one or two examples, or even the 1,000. 1,000 out of 400 million is not much. So, but we focus on that. And then everybody, when I was going to school as a kid, we walked everywhere. We walked to school. Our parents didn't take us to school. We didn't show up until it was dusk, pretty much. And very few of us ever got into real trouble. There were a couple, but most of the trouble they got into was they broke a window or something like that. There wasn't that much problem. Now, how many parents are willing to let their kids go to school by themselves, go to anything by themselves? Not that many. And are there really that many crimes against kids? No. But the perception, because we watch the news, is that, oh my gosh, we're all going to die. And by the way, we are all going to die, so what are you afraid of?
Well, the truth is that children have to experiment, and they don't. If they don't, you don't learn anything.
Right.
And so, like, there are appropriate times to experiment and appropriate times, and so, like, who wants to go through their adolescence when they're 40-something? But that can happen. That's true.
That's true, and it is happening. What do they say? The kids right now are so over-scheduled to the point that they have no free time because they're too busy being scheduled. Yeah, there are some problems inside. You probably don't want your kid on the streets all the time because there are some issues going on right now. On the other hand, how do you learn independence? How do you learn to work on your own, to solve your own problems? And those are issues.
Yeah. I'm sorry to.
Okay.
Well, I think that, like, I think of when my mother. I used to, like, my mother suffered a lot when I was growing up. She had undiagnosed thyroid issues, so she had a lot of depression. And my dad traveled a lot and was in mining and in petroleum geology, so he was out of town. And so my mother, like, basically hid away a lot of the time.
Sure.
And I remember scheduling myself to do a lot of activities, and I would walk places, and it was like I had a very, very intense, imaginative world. I was doing that, and I thought, okay, at the time I was really sort of angry and ashamed of my mother, but now I realize that was probably the best possible thing for me because it did help me develop a certain level of imaginative space.
Sure.
And then now I look back and I feel a lot of compassion for her.
Yeah, it's growing up. I think we all go through stuff like that, and the human race is built so that we really don't want to be around our parents at a certain point because you need to be independent. You need to break away from you want to be part of the tribe, but you want to be left alone by the tribe. And at one point you want to be on your own, and the tribe helps you sort of get that way. That's kind of our hormones do that. Everything does that. But then as you get older, you realize, tribe not so bad. Maybe me the problem. And that's just the nature of growing up. And I think everybody goes through that in one way or another. There was an old cartoon I remember years ago. It had 2 hall rooms in this big convention center. One said, dysfunctional families. And the line went all the way out the door of the auditorium, all the way down in the street. And then the next line said functional family, and there was one person in the whole room. And so I think we're all kind of in that boat.
Well, that's true. And I think that, understanding and realizing that we're part of that majority of people who feel like they're a little bit odd, that gives you an edge. And then as a teenager, my mother signed me up for a thing called Institute in Basic Youth Conflicts. And she could tell I was really miserable. And so I went to it, and it was from the church, but it was essentially didn't really matter what denomination or what type. The idea was that God is love, and God accepted me, and I was loved exactly as I was, and accepted exactly for who I was. And that was like, wow, rain on the desert. And my mother was like, she was kind of a perfectionist, and so I was like, and so it was like, it was really nice. It really helped me. It kind of turned me around.
Now,
and
now it's interesting too, because I didn't realize this. Now your dad was a geologist too.
Yes, that's how I became interested in geology.
That's interesting. So you kind of went to the rock side.
I did.
Sorry, bad joke.
Well, I just thought that he was really fascinating, and I kind of wanted to be my dad, because he had this, like, it seemed to me a really adventurous life, and he was, his company was in Reno, Nevada, and then he also we were in Norman, Oklahoma, so it was between the two places, and I remember going out with him to different mines and looking at, like, copper, and I could recognize different copper types, like malachite and azurite in Arizona at a young age, and I used to go out to wells with him too, in Oklahoma, oil and gas wells, and it fascinated me. It seemed like there was like a sense of discovery, and you could change your world, and the transformative adventure, treasure kind of thing. It was really great.
That's good.
Yeah, and my brother ended up becoming a geologist. I married a geologist. We met on a paleontology field trip, and my nephew just graduated with his master's degree in petroleum geology.
So whenever anything goes wrong, you have a rocky relationship. Is that how it works, or? Sorry, I have a free flow mind sometimes, but anyway, Susan, we are at the end of our time today. And this is fun, totally unplanned. We had a different plan for today. And today the talk, in fact, we'll have it on Monday. We're going to have Dr. Patty Shank back on. And she just wrote a book called Be the Best Boss of You. And that's a good title. And it's actually a very good book, because it's all about, if you can't be your own best boss, who will be?
Very good point.
So it should be an interesting show, and she was all ready today. She had makeup on. So anyway, and then we found out we were streaming that whole thing as we're talking and joking about it. So anyway, that stream will probably disappear soon, but it was there. We didn't realize somebody hit the button. So here we are. But at least we got some talk out of this, and some points about lives and edges, and really how we can do something with whatever we have. There's always something that can give us an edge, or someone who can help us find that something that sparks the curiosity. Like it sounds like in your case, your initial curiosity may have been your dad, who you admired or liked and felt that what he did was interesting and cool, and look at you now. Yeah, you're doing things you probably never thought you'd do.
Well, it's true. It's true. And then also my mother did, even though it was in a different sort of way, because I had a lot of freedom and just, different levels of experience, different people. I appreciate what you're saying.
Yeah, and it's good. And it sounds like, it was good for you, as it is for many people. We all grow and develop in different ways. And, the cookie cutter approach just doesn't work too well. Maybe for the core disciplines that you need, or the core knowledge that you need, maybe at that point it's good to have a certain amount of cookie cutter. But at one point you probably need to go out and figure out what kind of cookies you like. They may be different from what everybody else likes. That goes down to the different drummer, and we don't listen to the same things or hear the same things, or think how boring life would be if every one of us was exactly the same.
Exactly. Right. And the other thing too is that you may not think it about yourself. You might be filled with self-criticism and a little bit of existential anxiety, but people need you. And also everybody is fascinating. I mean, every single person has something that is a spark of life.
Yeah.
And it's really important.
Yeah, that's true. And with that, we're going to let you try to figure out who you are. And next week, send us your tweets, send us your Facebook, and tell us who you are.
That's great.
We'll be glad for you. Or if you're not sure who you are, send us a question. And we'll try to figure out who you are. Maybe.
Or sketch.
Or sketch. Do something. Yeah, but don't be surprised you don't like our answer. But that's okay. We're a little irreverent sometimes, but that's okay. Well, anyway.
Well, Rick, you are fabulous.
Oh, so are you. So anyway, we will see you all next week on LifeEdge, and next week will actually come probably twice next week because we'll have the show that we didn't have today. We had this show instead, and then I think we have a show scheduled for the following Friday. Are we on for next Friday?
Yes, or Thursday.
Thursday or Friday, whatever works.
Yeah.
What are we on normally for? Thursday?
I think Thursday.
Thursday. Oh, you're right. Today. Oh God, today I keep thinking today's Thursday. I'm a day ahead of myself. It happens. It's that dimensional rift problem. But anyway, so we will see you all next week on LifeEdge. Have a good one. Thanks, Susan.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.